Good morning, Governor, and thanks for joining us this morning as we explore the question, why did God curse the ground? Otherwise known as...
Why is my job so hard?
I gotta get up in the morning. I gotta go to work. Okay, well, we're not, of course, going to be discussing anybody's job in particular, not my job, not his job, not your job. But is a deeper question. There's no way for us to know how your job might be hard or any particular situation. There might be 100 different reasons why your job is difficult. We're going to look at the curse God gave Adam and Eve after the fall and then relate that to our current situations in general. The reason why we're looking at this is because it came up as a discussion in response to one of our videos. And since it was such a good thought-provoking discussion, I thought it was worthwhile to devote a live stream to the questions raised. So first, let's take a look at the text where this comes up from. This is in response to the curse after the fall. And if you're not familiar with that, basically what it is after Adam and Eve had the original sin in the Garden of Eden, God then cursed them. And we'll also look at why God is just waiting for us to make a mistake so he can strike us down with the curse. And that's not the case. The curse is actually, there's another side to that where it's actually kind of a blessing. So let's take a look at the scripture for this. It says, this is out of Genesis 3, verses 16 through 19. To the woman, he said, I will make your pains in childbearing severe. With painful labor, you will give birth to children. Your desire will be for your husband, and he will rule over you. To Adam, he said, because you listened to your wife and ate the fruit from the tree which I commanded you, you must not eat from it. Cursed will be the ground because of you. Through painful toil, you will eat food from it all the days of your life. It will produce thorns and thistles for you, and you will eat the plants of the field. By the sweat of your brow you will eat your food until you return to the ground, since from it you were taken. For dust you are, and dust you will return. So you dun.
Yeah. Where does it say, I curse you?
He doesn't say I curse you.
Because I'm just looking at this, it seems to be statements of facts. The ground is cursed because of you.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
So this isn't directly God cursing humanity. It's saying, hey, because of your decision, because of what you did, these are the outcomes. This is what's going to happen. This is like using my son as an example because I love my son. And he sometimes does things that are
stupid.
Not the...
That's stupid.
That's stupid. He decided he wanted to have a bunch of candy one day and decided to hide away and eat a bunch of candy. I mean, like 70 pieces of candy or some huge number like that. Yeah.
Wait. Hold a second. I think Easter, all of us has kind of done this
Easter
as a
candy. Yeah,
as kids.
Some of us have
70. So you're talking about like the individual wrap.
Individual wrap pieces. Went through, ate a whole bunch of them.
Are you exaggerating?
Nope. Got himself. We counted on the wrappers. Got himself sick because of that and threw. Yeah. So.
Wow.
Did I curse my son by making him throw up after he ate the candy? No, those were.
Was he cursed by God because he threw up? Was that because God cursed him?
No, that's because of the repercussions of his decision. And if I were to stand there and say, well, son, because you did this, because you chose this, you are going to throw up. It's not me saying you have to throw up because you did this, or I'm going to make you. You didn't
change the laws of physics so that biology, so he would throw up.
No, he threw up because he made himself sick because the repercussions of his decision.
That's a pretty good illustration.
Yeah, I'm actually kind of thankful he did it.
Oh my gosh.
It works. I've used it a couple of
Can't
live
do something
streams.
else stupid so I could use it as an illustration. No.
No, it works because I've used it in a couple of illustrations now.
Oh my gosh.
I've even used it to share the gospel. It
Okay.
worked quite
Yeah.
well.
Well, I guess we're using it now. We can all be grateful that your son did something stupid and it threw up. Okay. So yeah, that's a good point. So this is not so. I don't want to read into the text. It could be traditional that the curses were be given by this and so forth. These things will happen to you because curse you. Had I known about this, we would have taken a look maybe at Israel's curse of Judah, because he said something against Judah because Judah had done something he shouldn't have done. He said, therefore, this will happen. I'm wondering if there is more of a passive voice that's given to those curses, though. I don't want to read too much into the text, but your illustration is still good. And whether it was an active thing that God had done to actually change the situation, or if it was because of a natural consequence of our disobedience, I think the result is still the same.
Well, because we rebelled against the Creator, the creation rebelled against us being the stewards. I could see where that would be consistent.
Yeah,
with what's written.
So Sideswipe said, and I got to tell you, man, your name there, I keep thinking of a Transformer. It's like a Transformer name. It's like, who was
Sideswipe?
What was it? Skyscream. What was it? What was the guy's name? Starscream. One of the Decepticons. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, it sounds like a. I want to say a Decepticon name, but it almost sounds like that. Anyway, you're saying you never thought of it that way. Yeah, it's an interesting take. And again, I to do this properly, to do a Bible study properly, I'd have to take a look at other curses in the Old Testament to say, were they usually spoken in passive voice like that, or not? Does this stand out as being something unique? So it's worthy to take a look at.
There's other occasions that like God turned them over to deceptive spirits. It's not that God is specifically like, I'm going to deceive you. It's saying, okay, well, you guys want this. You guys have itchy ears. You guys are diving into this. You guys are ignoring all the truth that I'm sending you.
Yeah.
Well, okay, if this is what you want this badly.
But I feel,
I'll remove my hand.
I feel like my car is a vegetarian.
My car's a vegetarian. What's the vegetarian have to do with it?
It's hey, we don't want to hurt the environment, so my car is a vegetarian. I know it. I feel it in my heart. And so dinosaurs. I know this is true. This morning, I did a smoothie. I made a nice little smoothie, put it together, got some carrots, some celery, made a nice little smoothie, and I had a funnel and I poured it into my gas can. So today we're going to go environmentally friendly. My car is going to work that way.
Huh. Well, I guess you were right about the Transformer thing.
Yes, I saw that. But
I've seen people do that where they'll take like cooking grease and.
Well, that's okay. That's something that's different with a diesel engine that you can do some things like that and get away with it. But I'm talking about a regular gasoline engine. Guys, read the manual. All right, your car is you're going to have to take your car in the shop, and good luck on them trying to clean it all out, especially if you have any kind of sugars in there. You're going to ruin your engine. So in the same way, I guess you could say that we would do that with sin, that we're not following what the manufacturer says. Hey, this is how you treat your engine. This is how you treat your body. This is how you treat your life. This is how you treat other people around you. If you don't, things aren't going to work for you. It's going to fall apart, and there's going to be all sorts of problems. You're going to have thistles and thorns and all sorts of stuff going on. Well,
you also have, just going off of this now, the reason why I pull up the deceptive one is because Muslims will go to that, because Allah in the Quran, it describes Allah as the greatest of all deceivers, talking about the crucifixion of Jesus on the cross. They say they deceived and Allah is the best of deceivers. And I point that out saying, guys, only one person in the Bible has this sort of father of lies,
Oh, yeah.
deceiver title,
Yeah.
and it ain't God.
No.
Then they'll point to the deceiving spirits and say, see, even the God in the Bible deceives people. I'm like, no.
No, we
Look
did.
at how
Did we
it
do a
is.
study on that? I know that we.
I don't think we have.
There's a
I know
video.
we've talked about it.
Okay, because I do have a presentation for that where there is where he does say it was in the Old Testament. It was a prophet that was brought before the king. I had to look it up to see what the reference is. But he's basically mocking the other false prophets in front of this king, because his king is a bad king. I don't know, it was Ahab or somebody. He has all these false prophets there, and he's saying, he brings this guy up because these guys aren't giving him good information. He brings up the I don't know, it's Elijah or something. Brings him up before him and says, "You tell me the truth." Says, "Really? You want this?" And then he points out to this, and he's mocking these other guys. You got to look at the context for that. You talk about the deceiver passage, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So that was a good
well.
one.
There's a couple where it's like, okay, we turn to you, where God specifically says, "I turn you over to, deceiving spirits." I remove my protection.
Yeah.
It's not that I am the deceiving spirit. It's like they're already there. I've been holding them off, and you guys aren't listening to me.
Yeah.
Fine. I'll let you eat the fruit that you want.
Yeah.
And I mean, if we look at the entire story of the Bible, that's sort of what it is. There are repercussions for our actions, for our decisions. And if we choose not to have a relationship with Christ, God will respect that decision.
Yeah.
Even though he doesn't like it, he'll respect it. And that's what leads us to hell, by our own choices and decisions.
So there was a time in my life where I just didn't want to listen. I was just totally rebellious against God. I knew better. I really did know better. But I thought that I was going to have personal fulfillment. I won't go into the details for it, but things were going to be better for me if I chose my own way. And it was an obviously bad decision. I'm not even from a non-believer's point of view. It was like, dude, don't do this. It says, I don't care. I'm going to do it anyway. And I was like, God really put a picture in my mind. It was like a dog on a leash, just wanting to go for something bad. And God was just like holding us. No, don't. And I'm just fighting against him. And finally just, okay, fine. Let go of the leash. And man, it got bad. So
you have to learn the hard way sometimes.
I did. We do have to learn the hard way sometimes. And this is, I think, probably an illustration of what's happening here with the Garden of Eden. We'll get into the actual chat discussion here in a minute. But in Eden, it's like that with he says, listen, here's a good choice. Here's the other choice. You want to do it your way. Gotta get on camera here. You want to do it your way, or you want to do it God's way. And it's like we are constantly fighting at that leach to try to grab control of the situation again too.
I think it's something it's a lot of people, if not everyone, struggles with that, with control. Being the one in control, being the one who decides what happens, where we go, what we do, all of that aspect, and to be willing to surrender, say, okay, I got sort of my loose goals that I want to accomplish, but God, what do you want?
Yeah.
Where do you want us to go? What do you want us to do?
Ultimately, that's the thing. So I want to turn to let's see. Let me just check something here.
The discussion, because I haven't seen the discussion.
Yeah, so let's see what was said in the chat. Although the chat could be considered public since it was shared openly on my channel, I'm going to give the chatters privacy and not reveal their names. They would probably be totally okay with this, but I figured, well, since I haven't talked to them, I'm just going to go ahead and not have their names up there. Sorry, guys, if you're looking for publicity, you're not going to get it. I don't think that was the case either. I think they were just having the discussion. So the first one is, it opened up like this. It just occurred to me that Adam and Eve lived in a world without hardship or any difficulty. And we see how that turned out. So that relates to the question of, why does God allow suffering?
I guess this is slightly different than what I was thinking. That So this is going on the question of suffering.
It does a bit, and I don't want to. There's the whole problem of pain, and that is a much larger discussion. I think we're just going to kind of touch on that a little bit today, because if God is all knowing and all powerful, why is there
Fine, just read the book.
Pain and suffering in the world?
The Problem with Pain by C.S. Lewis. There you go.
Yeah, that would be a good review. We should probably do a review on that story. So that relates to the question, why does God allow suffering? And he followed that up with this point here, saying, I guess the answer is the other way. The other way was tried and didn't work. I suppose we chose our path, just like Israel, when they wanted a human king instead of God. God gave them the path that they chose, just like we were talking about earlier. And the consequences of that choice were the price.
I don't think it's not that it was tried and failed. We were tested and we failed. We did choose the path. So he's right about that part. So the other way was tried and did not work.
Yeah, I don't know if that's that's entirely accurate, because God gave us it was one test that was given, and we chose poorly.
Yes, we chose one option that really wasn't the best.
Yeah, and I say we because as a species, as a human species, receiving the genes from our ancestors here who made that choice, and then we're receiving basically the same thing. So how can I be held responsible for actions that they did? I inherited the sin nature from them. But anyway, there's these two choices that are there. So you're saying that you wouldn't really necessarily agree with it. The other path was tried.
I wouldn't say that the other path necessarily was tried and failed. It didn't work. But I definitely agree with the second section that it's like, hey, we chose our path.
Yeah.
And it's very similar to what Israel did with a king.
Okay.
It's like, hey, no, I want to be your king. Well, we want an earthly king.
We want our own.
We want our own, like everyone else. But
so there was an answer here. It says, good point. One reason he allows suffering is because he wanted free will. So let's just talk a minute about why the whole test in the garden thing. Why was that brought up as a possibility?
Why was it needed? Well, if you're in a relationship, it's really not a good relationship or even a productive relationship if there's not choice involved.
Right.
If you can't choose to be in that relationship, I'd say an example would be my wife. If she was forced into marrying me, that's not much of a marriage. Where if she chose to be in that marriage, that is on a completely different level.
I've seen something recently come up with the advent or I wouldn't say popularity, but it's kind of leaning that way a little bit. And dear God, I hope we don't go down this path. AI girlfriends. This is like maybe an extension of porn. Porn would just hit the visceral vision stimulus for mostly for guys, but I guess some for women too, is that you would hit that, but it's completely empty and void of relationship.
Oh, I think that's a symptom of a lot of other issues that
it
we
is.
have with
it
the
is.
dating world in general and the risks that are involved for young men.
Yeah. So there, you're right. It does open up a big can of worms of what's behind that. But then because of whatever the situation is, loneliness or whatever, that's not enough. And then you can have sort of this caricature or even look like a real person with the advances in AI and a large language model behind it, giving you discussions, being able to have carry on a discussion with you. So this is it's just that thing though doesn't really have free will behind it.
No.
Right? It's just a program, just an algorithm. So with this, then you have put this up.
No choice equals no love. Yep.
Choice equals opportunity for evil and with that comes pain. So if you're going to introduce choice to the matter and have a person be able to say, I choose to love you or not, there's the opportunity it could go the other way.
Well, same thing with like children. I mean, they have the opportunity to do what is right, to choose the right path. They have the opportunity to hide in the corner and eat candy and get sick. So,
poor kid, man. Bring him
I
out.
gotta make it work. Okay,
You do. It works already. So we have that choice and opportunity, but it may sound harsh. But who suffered most in history? So if you look at, maybe you can look at different people groups. Maybe they say, okay, they really had it hard because throughout history they had it hard. Is there any one particular person that stands out to say that historical figure to say that, man, this person had the hardest life? If God can't be fair, because you look at what happens to this particular group or this particular person, born, handicapped, disabled, and ridiculed. Remember, there was the movie, The Elephant Man. Now, this is an older movie where this man had this disease where his bones, his facial structure, the bones would continue to grow, and then he would just become this grotesque feature. And he was brought into circuses and stuff like this, I believe, as a sideshow freak. And they were really brutal with this poor guy. And I remember this one part, he says, I am not an animal. You look at somebody who's suffering like that, you think, man, how could there be a God? Why would he do that? Why would he put that up? Well, of course, we just talked about having the ability for free choice and everything with it. And then,
so to answer your question, now you said people group. So this isn't just, there's one person in particular in the Bible, and if that's where you're going on.
Yeah, I'm trying to get to that. Don't do the tension. Okay, wait. Back up. Let me do that again.
Question.
No, I was getting to the rhetorical question. Okay, so who
wasn't a question?
Yes, it was. Stop. So who suffered most in history was Jesus. There we go. Punchline said, punchline ruined. Moving on. What were you going to say?
You said you were going on the people group thing, so I'm thinking, no, every people group that's been out there has been a jerk to someone and has suffered accordingly. I remember watching, in fact, this funny little snippet. There was a video. It looks like two guys. One guy's, I think it was Korean. The other guy, normal Caucasian, are sitting there talking back and forth. And the Korean guy.
Did you just say normal Caucasian?
Yes, normal Caucasian.
Oh my gosh.
Nothing unusual about it.
Okay. All right. Forgive my racist friend here. He was normal, but he wasn't Asian. Okay, never mind. I see what you're saying, though. Okay, from your point of view.
No, I mean, there's just nothing.
Oh, there's nothing wrong with him. Okay, I see
abnormal or noticeable about the guy.
So he doesn't have any like disability, handicap, or outstanding, or what? Just regular guy.
Quickly.
Yes, it is. Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Okay, so they're sitting there talking, and the Korean says, "You know what? We are, the Koreans are great. We never had slavery, ever." Okay. And it's like, okay, no, let's check that. The Koreans had the longest uninterrupted slave trade of any of the Asian nations.
Really?
1,500 years.
Wow.
And the guy's sitting there like, oh, we're jerks. Never mind, we're jerks.
That's put that.
That's put in perspective. That was a common practice throughout the world. In fact, it was abnormal for a society to say we are not going to do that. Mm-hmm. That's why the abolition of slavery is such an odd event in history.
Right.
So that's just an example saying, yeah, all people group have had issues. They've been enslaved. They have enslaved. People are jerks to each other.
Yeah.
So
now you could say, well, yeah, but chattel slavery was different. Yes, it was different. There was also slavery that you take your slave and you have that slave as a human sacrifice. So that's throughout the
there's all
sorts of harsh things that are done for that. So
Yeah, in the Bible, it's more of what's outlined in the Bible isn't that in more of indentured servitude where there is a limit set on it saying, okay, there's only this many years that you can have someone as basically a servant. There's limitations on what you can do during that time period to them. There are laws and regulations in there. And then you have chattel slavery, which is what Muhammad pushed a lot, which was go to war, take captives. They are slaves the rest of their lives. And even when he, quote unquote, freed them, they were still slaves. And a lot of times they just ended up being slaves again.
Right.
So
And then you also have the Eastern slave trade out of Africa, not just the Western slave trade. The Eastern slave trade started earlier and ended later. And those who went through it, the guys, there was a tremendous, I forget the numbers going east, but you look at Arabia now, you think, well, if they had all those slaves, or where all the black people in Saudi Arabia then?
Snippy.
They were castrated.
They're castrated. The women were sold as sex slaves. The children of those sex slaves were often killed. The fatality rate for the Arab slave trade was 90% of the slaves that started the journey died on the journey.
Yeah.
Where compared to the America's slave trade, not the entire area, that was a 10% death rate. Okay. So 90 to 10%.
Okay, I'd have to check the numbers on there too. But we got a comment here. Abortion, villainous, and before that he said Jubilee year. So you're going to have to clear what
year of Jubilee.
What about it?
One of the limitations on slavery.
Oh,
was
yes.
Every 7 years, it's like, okay, you guys are all free.
Now I could do that if it's like credit card debt. The problem with that, you know how we would treat that. If every 7 years, it was like 7 years. People would rack up their debt right before. It's like this is year 6.
There wouldn't be any, because there's no way there's no way the banks would give out that money, because they would know this time frame. So you would have loans of 7 years, no more. So you'd have to be paid up before the year of Jubilee.
That makes sense.
And then there'd have to be something else there to make sure you just didn't.
What kind of difference would it make in our society, just even on a governmental level? Our government not being able to go into debt, have this massive debt, because every 7 years it'd be wiped out, and Congress would say no one would be able to actually secure that debt. That would also include bonds, right? Because bonds would be a type of debt being paid off and everything.
Bonds would expire. Wow. I mean, student loans. You'd have a restructuring of universities and colleges.
Yeah.
There'd be a cascade. We really are a debt society.
We are.
Maybe that's a live stream on self saying, why was God so against debt?
That's a good point. That's very good. So here you had another one here, abortion. I'm not sure how that would be related to the discussion.
Whole can of worms, but how is that relevant
to slavery? Maybe you can specify that. Thomas Hall said, how God sees people is not how we see them. God is not utilitarian, i.e. parents with special needs, kids are transformed by the experience in ways others are not be. Wow. Yes. Yeah, so true. So someone once said that idolatry, they say, we don't have idolatry now. No, but if you look at it in a different light, I mean, we don't have little statues, those are pray to little statues and stuff like that. But if idolatry is loving things and using people, I would say that we're quite idolatrous. But understanding how God sees people, and this is in C.S. Lewis's book, The Weight of Glory. He puts that in a slightly different light. He says, if we were to see ourselves in eternity, we would either be sitting next to someone who would be so glorious that we would be tempted to get down and worship them, or so hideous that it would be worse than any of our nightmares. And this is basically taking where we are now to an extreme, just like a person you see who's on drugs like meth. You see these before and after pictures of people on meth. Just, this beautiful person, exterior wise, right? And just later, just a wreck. They've aged like 20 years. They're, teeth problems. They look like they haven't slept in weeks. And if you continue to take that down the extreme with sin, it just corrupts us so much.
So here, I mean, the comment has a good point. Those parents who are dealing with special needs kids who are going through that, it's hard for them, but it's also a great opportunity for their own personal growth, as well as the love and affection that they get from the child that they love so much. I know that my wife's been pregnant multiple times, and every time they've asked us if we want to do some special testing to see if our child would have any mental illness or deformity or anything along those lines. And my wife just straight up asked them, okay, what's the point of that? Well, then we would know if you want to have an abortion or not. And the answer is, well, we're not going to have an abortion no matter what. So it's kind of an irrelevant test, isn't it?
I would disagree a little bit. And I understand what you're saying about that, but I would want to be prepared if the child did have special needs upon being born to say, okay, now we're ready for whatever the situation
I
is.
understand that it's not 100. The tests were 100% either, but that was specifically why they were asking.
Yeah.
It was to know if we wanted to have an abortion or not.
Yeah.
And yes, I understand being prepared for it, but the point is we're not going to have it. So why would we spend the money on such a test if it's not going to happen?
That's a good point. Another thing here too is I think, Thomas, you really hit the nail on the head with this here. And this is one thing I was talking about earlier with the difference between looking at the curse of God actually being a blessing. I know this is really puts it on its head. So God said, curses this, curses this, curses this. And like you're saying, just making it more like a statement of fact. These things are now going, because you chose this is now going to happen. Again, I need to look back and see the other curses in the Old Testament to see if it's consistent with passive voice. But he says this, and I'm thinking later, see, he's doing us a favor. As hard as this is to look at all the pain, suffering, and all this is going on, is like we chose to go around this path. And this is the only way that things can be achieved, going by plan B. This is not plan A. We chose plan B. Plan A was a much better plan. And if you ever have the chance, read C.S. Lewis's Perelandra. That's plan A, going through that. And so it's one of my favorite books that he has written. It's right on the top. It's better. It's in the Space Trilogy. I think it's better than the other two books in the Space Trilogy. But there's plan A, that he really did want us to go straight for glory. He knows ahead of time what's going to happen, all right, because he's omniscient. So he already knew before the foundation of the world that the Lamb of God, was slain before the foundation. It was already a decision that was made. Yes, we're going to go through this. And that's another part of his love for us, is showing that even though he knew that this level of hardship, he was going to be suffering more than anybody else in history. Even then, it was worth it for him to have us as his bride with us later. But this plan B is still nurturing us to get us to that point where we need to be. And consider pure joy, my brothers, when you face trials of many kinds, because you know that this must be complete, must happen so that you can be complete. So, yeah, I wouldn't want to wish having a special needs child on anybody. The amount of patience and difficulty. Some of the most loving people I've seen are like, people with Down syndrome. Oh my gosh. That's
when Jesus is talking about out of the mouths of babes. Yeah, that's the innocence, the ability just to love, I guess, not being concerned by the weights of the world is really depicted in them a lot of times.
Yeah. Another thing too is you look at people who and Jesus didn't have any children, so this is not an indictment against anybody who is either single and or doesn't have any children themselves. But there is a real maturing process, one, of getting married, because now it's not just your own personal concerns, but the concerns also, it's us and not just me. And then when you have children, and they try your patience. Candy eating boy over here knows that's the situation, but man, that's talking about developing character. So Villain has said, against usury, not interest, the Bible does discuss the difference. Okay, this is back to boy, this opens up a whole can of worms. Yeah, I think this might be worth a separate live stream, just because we are such a debt-ridden society. And the question of, now this even goes back to, just to say real quickly, this even goes back to the Middle Ages with, I think both Muslims and Christians were not allowed to apply interest.
So the Jews, that's one of the reasons the Jews own some of the largest banks, because they started early on, and they're the ones that could have interest.
Yes. And so both groups, if you look at like Spain during the Middle Ages, Iberia, you had Muslim and Christians both living there simultaneously in a large Jewish population, and that particular culture was not prohibited, or at least they didn't view it that way, as being able to charge interest. From my understanding, I also have to look back in history to see it. That's the point.
No, that's how it is, because that's how they became the owners of the bank. And now, of course, with the flip side, where you would have people who are accusing the Jews of controlling and conspiring on everything, and they're like, well, you guys didn't want it, so we just did the job that you guys didn't want. It's our fault. You guys didn't want it.
We provided a service. What are you talking about?
You guys said, we don't want to do it, but we still want this.
We're here for you.
So, Jews, you guys take this over. And then it's like, okay, we'll take it over. How dare you take it over? Wait, hold on here. Hold on.
So here's another comment from Villainous. He says the abortion comment was about the lack of offspring from Arabic slave trade.
Yeah, that would be another option I've been. Wow. Burning the infants alive was also another section.
Oh, wow. But, nastiness.
Yeah, there's a whole documentary on my channel where I just go through.
I bet. The stream is going to get pinged if you keep talking. You know what? So be it.
About what?
The abortion issue. We're gonna get pinged if we keep talking about that. I don't care. I'll talk about that. I'll talk about others. They take.
I got pinged all the time.
Yeah, I'm good with it. Thank you for the warning, but I care not. Bring on the YouTube minions. We shall deal with them one at a time. So, going back to this discussion, then who suffered most in history? That was Jesus. It was never God's plan. So this is going back to the discussion that was the chat that was there. It was never God's plan that Adam and Eve would never face hardship. The goal was also always the same: to steward the whole creation, including outside the garden. The fall just occurred before they left. So here's the question: What would have been the plan for Adam and Eve? Let's say they passed the test, right? And that wasn't just the only tree in the middle of the garden. There was another tree, right? Mm-hmm. But they refused. They said, no, snake, go crawl on your belly someplace else. We shall obey God and not turn our back on him. It'll be all in his timing, whether we have knowledge like gods or not. And so then he crawls away, and God appears and says, well done, my good and faithful servants. Enter now into your work, not into your rest, but into your work. And that was the point of this discussion here. You got hardship and you got work. So the whole point of creation is that we are not just supposed to, stay in the garden and pop grapes and stuff like that and lay around lazy all day, but we did have actual work to be done.
Stuff to do.
Right. And the curse concerned that, right? The curse was concerning that. There was the labor and the work that the guy was supposed to be doing. Both of them were in the garden, and she was she would have offspring, and they would both raise the children, and it would be all this. And God says, you know what? you guys want to go your own way. These things are naturally going to be, you're going to have problems with
You're
this
gonna
now.
have problems. This is the natural outcome of the rebellion. I think we would be in that. Of course, the whole point of the garden, everything is going back to that relationship. We'd be in the active relationship with the Lord. Would we have work? Would we have difficulties? Sure, we'd have difficulties and work, but it would be with a completely different mindset.
And different problems with the work. It's not, it's going to be toil, sweat of brow, eat from the ground. As I think it was opposed to eating from the trees too, because I think there was a little bit of think that, and both the man and the woman, they had hardship concerning their primary goal.
Yep.
The primary task that they were going to be doing, right? So it was individual to both of them. It says you both are going to have a rough time. This is the way things are going to go from now. So to follow up with that, he said, at least part of the suffering here in preparation for being co-rulers in the age to come. I think not only will the new heaven and new earth not be boring, it'll be full of interesting challenges. Yes, dude, you hit it on the nail on the head. So the idea of us just strumming harps in heaven and just doing nothing and maybe watching reruns. I mean, imagine how old that would get. We're not built for that. We're built to do things. If you have, like, even you look at retired people, just, I don't know. I would have a hard time just sitting around watching soaps all day or something. Who knows? Whatever the deal is, that you would go out there and you have these projects that you want to do. You got this bucket list, right? And God has a bigger plan for us to be involved with things, to be, like you said, something about ruling, something about judging angels, something about all this other kind of stuff that is to come, that is going to be really exciting. And I think it was it Weight of Glory, C.S. Lewis? He was talking about it. It's not that.
Oh, the desires?
Yes.
Yeah, it's not that our desires are too strong, but that they're too weak.
Yeah.
It's like a kid who's playing in the mud puddle, making mud pies. He can't imagine what it would mean by going on vacation on the beach.
Yeah.
Even if he was offered it.
We are just like stuck in these little things. God says, I got so much more for you going on. I'm not talking about the prosperity gospel here. I'm talking about things to come. And we're still going through all this hardship here because of stuff that's to come. But we are just overly satisfied with the stupid things.
Well, we compromise. We compromise on sex. We compromise on other addictions. We compromise on any sort of pleasure we want. We take it. We don't always follow what the Lord's plan is for those, which is better, is the best of the options. We decide we want to compromise and just have our stuff now.
So I guess an illustration would be something like if someone were to come up to you and offer you the keys to a Lamborghini and said, I give you this car. You can drive this car anywhere you want. I give you the title. I give you the keys. It is yours. Or you can have this chocolate bar. What do you want? And we're with sin. We're like, I'll take the chocolate bar, man. I can eat that now. I can't eat the Lamborghini. So,
a lot of times kids would do that. They have like
no concept
on kids because they don't have the concept.
Of what's going to. Yep. Yeah. It's over the top.
I think I've seen videos where it's like, okay, I got a chocolate bar for you, or you can have $10,000. What do you want? I want the chocolate bar. Well, kid would choose the chocolate bar because that's what they know. That's what they can enjoy right now without realizing $10,000. That's a lot of chocolate bars.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I skipped one here. It says, Villainous said, the return to Eden at that second coming includes our work being worthwhile again, to not be in vain. I'm really looking forward to that.
I don't think we'll be in the. I don't think it's going to be the same deal. Because I don't think.
Returning to Eden.
Returning to Eden. I don't think Adam and Eve were not co-heirs with Christ. I think we will have a different position at the end.
That was their innocent
state. A higher position.
That was their innocent state, right? That was before, basically before the test. If you look at the beginning, we started in a garden, much to my wife's chagrin. We started in a garden, and you look at the end, we end in a city. Now, I'm a country guy, so I love the country. But the idea is that we're with people. There is a larger community. It's not like I'm stuck in an apartment, tiny 1-bedroom apartment with a leaky faucet. No, that's not the deal. It's that we're with people. There's a community there, right? And so we start in the garden, we end there, and there's something much bigger that's coming and not just necessarily returning to that earlier state. Good morning, Francis, or good afternoon to you. Whoa, I missed the whole thing. God bless you both and your family. Yes, you did. You have to rewind now. Go to the beginning. And a villain just says, "What's wrong with making mud pies?" I guess somebody is enjoying that a little too much.
Welcome, Francis. Yeah.
If going back to the chat that we had here, so if you're just joining us, we're going through a chat, a discussion that was going on in one of the responses to the video. I thought was such a good discussion that was worthwhile reviewing, and we're just an open-ended talk here, and with you guys in the live chat too. So the response was, not sure if the challenges are hardship, though. I think this is talking about. Let's go back. I don't know. Not sure if that was talking about in the garden. Never face hardship. Okay, talking about hardship in the garden, I believe. Not sure if all the challenges are hardship, though. The suffering brought by sin is what was considering hardship. I agree. I don't think that they were just to sit around. God gave Adam a job right away. Name all the animals. Not an easy task. Certainly challenging, but under the circumstances, I think I would be unwilling to call it hardship. I think fundamentally we agree, though. Certainly appreciate your perspective. So this is like I said, a good conversation between the two. So you do have an example right here of how there was a task that was given Adam and also Eve, with Adam first, because he was there first and stuff, and God gave him that. And then there was the tending of the garden. What do they actually need to do to tend the garden? I don't know. It's like pruning. Is it cultivating? Whatever the deal was, there was not an indication of actual toil, but it was occupation. Something that took him, and there's probably some creative aspect that he was doing also. There was definitely creative aspect in naming the animals. And God's saying, hey, listen, you can name them. So, and was it just naming, or was there something more to it than that? I heard somebody saying that it was possibly more than just taxonomy, just naming the different species.
Well, names have power to it, so I see where that would be important to know, have that identity, have that name.
Yeah. So we have, okay, so he's talking about this perspective. Let's go on to the next thing in the chat. He says, agreed. Hardship was a poor choice of words on my part. My point was merely that we will not be merely sitting on clouds all day. And that's what some non-believers truly think we believe. That's a really good point, is what kind of image do people who are not Christians view Christian eternity? How, like we said earlier, that'd be just boring, just sitting around like that, right? There's got to be something more to that.
Very active.
Especially so one way that you could look at to say what God has planned for us in the future is look at how we're being trained now. If you look at maybe like a boot camp training or some kind of basic training for the military, and you say, okay, they're practicing with gas masks, they're out there drilling, they're using rifles, the rifle range, they're doing all these different things, a lot of exercise and calisthenics. So you can kind of get a picture of what's going to be done, what their future is going to be based on their training. There's no use of you being trained for something that you're not going to be doing. And so if we're looking at particular hardships and things going on in our lives right now, and the Bible does give us a bit of a picture of what the future is going to be holding for us. But if you look just at our training by itself, that'll give you a picture also, right?
Yep.
And it's all based on relationship with him, based on a relationship with each other, based on a relationship. What are the two Boil down to the commandments that God gives us. What are those 2 commandments that he gives us?
Love your Lord with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself.
Okay. So both of those are based on a relationship with God and a relationship with each other. I doubt very much that our eternity is going to be solitary confinement. In fact, that's probably closer to a picture of hell than it is of heaven.
Yeah.
Because again, we start in the garden, we end up in a city. We're with people. You talk about the marriage feast of the Lamb. All these other things are relationship based with each other and with him. So checking the chat again. Okay, so okay. In a humble opinion, correct me if I'm wrong, God would not curse the ground, but lift his favor upon us and its results to creep in. God would not curse the ground, but lift his favor upon us and results. Okay, so we did discuss.
Is he behind in the video?
I think you're behind in the video.
Might be behind in the video.
But it's worth just doing a real quick recap on this to say that the curse and it's basically your brother in Christ here has challenged me with going back and looking at other curses in the Old Testament to see if they're spoken in a passive voice saying, you have done this, therefore X, Y, and Z will happen. Not so much I will make these things happen, but they will, as a natural consequence, happen.
At least that's how that first one's worded.
Yes.
It's like, this is the results of your decision.
Yeah.
Okay. This is what's going to happen, guys.
Yes. So, but you could also say that God set up the entire system to begin with. And because of the way that he set it up and he had the choice of setting it up, he at that point made the decision that this is going to be the response. Either way, plan A would have been good. We're on plan B. Because of our sin, we're going this other route. And these hardships are necessary for us to hit our end goal and being with him in glory. So, yeah, not fun stuff, but it's there. And then Thomas Hall just said this. The plan A was to spread the garment to all creation outside, was good creation, but still wilderness. Oh, there's a good point. Is there some kind of cultivation that we were to do to go beyond? I think so. I think there was an occupation because he did give him that occupation to begin with, right? And that was at one level, and there could have been a higher level of occupation after that. You're smiling, so there's another comment here.
Yeah, Adam's
okay. This is the problem with the Islamic view of Jannah. After a while, sex will get boring if that's all it is. Yeah,
that's it. So you get sex, you get wine, you get all the things that are forbidden for Muslims now. You get it in Jannah. It's like, okay, hold on, because the Muslims keep telling me these things are evil. These things are evil. I'm like, why? You get them in heaven.
Yeah, they're evil. Then why do you get them in heaven? So think about just look at sex. What's the point of sex? The main point. Okay, the main point is more babies, right? And a closer relationship with your wife. You're learning that bonding experience with them, and then this is a also an illustration of God's relationship with the church, with his people. Obviously not the sexual overtones, but some level of intimacy there. The Hebrew word for prayer is like a word for sex. So there's very much intimacy there. And don't read too much into it. It's not like getting pornographic or anything, but that close bonding that God has with us is very much like a marriage relationship. And so we have all that understanding that comes out of that. So, if you look at sex as just being like, oh, it's all for eternity. Yeah, you're right. What's the point? You're going to have babies all the time? I mean, if that's the case, then it wouldn't just be the sex. It would also be raising the children would be a big part of it. But that's not.
It gets pretty graphic in the Islamic sources.
Yeah, it's twisted.
It's all human desire and desire of the flesh. That's all you get in heaven, according to Islam. Let me just boil it down. It's all male-driven desires because it sucks for the women.
Yeah,
it sucks for the women. It's like you basically get handed off to for women, you get handed off to one of the men to use as they see willingly. And that's it. You basically, wives stand in the corner and only get to interact with their husbands when their husbands want to screw them.
Oh,
That's it. That's all women get in Islam. It's nothing. It's hollow. There's nothing there. It's all, again, it's a man-made religion made by a man who was a sex deviant, who was obsessed with sex.
Yeah.
And pleasures of the flesh. And you see that through his actions and also through the heaven that he made, where God is serving man in heaven.
Yeah. Boy, this is back to the mud pie analogy that we were talking about this earlier about we are, it's not that our desires are too great, that they're just too limited, that we would be too satisfied with something that would be stupid, like a kid playing in the mud pit instead of willing to go to the beach and enjoy that. There's something so much better. And in this case, we're not just talking about mud pits, like you're playing in manure.
Yes.
Yeah, because if you think, oh, what a great thing the hand is. The hand is so wonderfully made, all these bones in here and the structure, and be able to do all this. And then I take this hand and I just amplify it, make it so much bigger, and so much bigger. And all of a sudden, then it is like 90% of my body mass is this hand. It's like this monstrous thing. That's what sex is. Sex does have a point. It's a great thing, which is in the right context. But if you pull it out of that context, it just becomes this monstrous aberration.
Yep.
And destructive. So, gosh, I can't believe they would.
Yeah, and another aspect of the heaven in Islam is there's no relationship with God. In fact, it counts how much heaven you get into, but you're not with God.
Yeah.
You're separate from him completely, and it's empty.
So Adam has a point here. It's the Islamic vision of heaven sounds like hell. And yeah, Thomas is right with that one. We have having babies all the time. Maybe that's where we get non-bleeding boys come from.
No.
Okay.
Details that, unless you want to dive into this,
no.
There's homosexual sex in
I
heaven as well, and there you go.
Okay. Yeah. Read the chats before I put them up. That's okay.
When it comes to Islam, yes, that's a safe assumption.
Yeah. Okay. Well, this is a good comment here. With not that the other one was bad comments, just maybe not appropriate. Adam said that's why I don't really get why women are Muslim.
I understand culturally, and I understand the pressures that are put on women to convert, and family pressures as well, being on an honor-shame culture. But yeah, if you knew the sources, women would never convert.
Maybe is it proper to say that a lot of them don't know?
A lot of them don't know the sources, and a lot of them have been lied to.
Yeah.
Where they'll say, oh, look, Muhammad was, he was a feminist. He pushed women's rights. And it's like, I read here in the Quran that men can beat women. If they have any question of, or any suspicion of rebellion, they can just start beating the crap out of women. This doesn't seem like women's rights very much.
You know what? And something can be said about that. My relationship with my wife. If I were to take that stance, which I wouldn't, but if I were to take that stance, I would lose out on so much of the positive interaction that I have with her. Has she disagreed with me? Yes. Has she been right on some of the things? Yes. God has given her to me as a helper, and part of that is a check to say, honey, I don't think we should be going this way.
Well, yeah, think of that. It is in many Muslim families where you have multiple wives as well. You have such an issue there because wives can't speak up to their husbands. They can't say, hey, honey, this is wrong. Pull the husband back in some regards, or you could get physical punishment, as well as the whole concept of multiple wives. They're at each other's throats all the time in a lot of these houses. In fact, you end up having basically, if you have 4 wives, you have 4 separate households that just have one family member in common, basically.
Right. Okay, so I'm going to put up a comment here from Francis. He says, Islam is based on all the masculine carnal desires a deviant can have. Hence, Mohammedans, that's a term
Mohammedans,
I haven't heard a whole lot, are attracted and attached to it.
Mohammedans is a much older term.
Yeah, so I've done a lot of research into the I was going to say Spanish Muslim, the conquest of Spain by Muslims in 711, and then the Reconquista, the Spanish pushing the Muslims out. This was I did a book, a novel based on that. We're going to be getting into this sometime soon. But so I did a lot of research with. They use Mohammedans. Also, what was the other one? So it starts with an S. It's based on Sarah. I forget the name.
Saracens?
Yeah, Saracens. Thank you very much. They said where they get the name Saracens from, and that was because Ishmael and his mother. That wasn't Sarah. That was yeah. So anyway, something like that. So
I know it comes up a lot in Hitler's writings.
Right.
He would refer to Muslims as
Saracens.
Mohammedans.
Thank you, Villainous. So much for the study that I did. Thomas said, Muslim women support it because of the same desire of the Hebrews of the Exodus wanting to return to Egypt. Those lesser desires. It's an easier life to be a slave. Ooh. I don't know if that would be everyone's story, but I could see the pull for that. And like you say, tradition and family.
Tradition on top of that with family desires, honor, shame culture. I could see where a lot of women get trapped into that.
And this would be true for, I think, anybody who is a Muslim too, is that since there are so many ties to the community, so many ties to the family, if you step out of line, then there are consequences to be paid. And that's very difficult. Your whole life, your whole social structure, your income, everything can unravel. There's a high cost to be paid for that.
Yep.
And
definitely if you're in a culture that doesn't let women work.
Yeah.
And the only form of income is your husband or your dad. And if that's the only way you're getting supplied, yeah, it is quite dangerous.
So, we've kind of deviated from the whole garden thing. Yeah, I want to get back into the discussion. So there was one last comment that was made in this discussion. Again, we're going over a couple of comments that were made, a few comments going back and forth. It made in the chat on one of the videos. I thought it was worthwhile to go through because it was really good discussion. And so I want to return back to that. We had a job to do in the garden. It was a task, a goal, a purpose, and we're designed for that. And we talked about this here just a little bit ago, but it's worthwhile reiterating. After the fall, it became something else. So we had something, an occupation for our hands. And after so why did God curse the ground? And we've talked about this to say, because it was plan B that made it harder for us. We wanted to go this other route. It was necessary for us to do this. And somebody brought up in a comment here, it's like, you have a special needs child. Depending how you handle it, because you can handle it poorly. But if you handle it well, the character of that mother and father, after raising that child for a number of years, they can have real soft, tender hearts and a real strength there as well. That can only be developed through this level of hardship. And that's why the curse is there. The curse is not really ultimately a curse, but it's a blessing to say, okay, it's going to be tough, guys, but we can get through this. You're going to go through boot camp now. You didn't have to go through boot camp before, but you have to do it now. And this is going to be the hardship.
Yep.
So we have coming up next week, From the Garden to the Planet of the Apes, 68. This is the original that we're going. And why are we going to be going over these? Because we're going to be ramping up to a release of a new movie from the Planet of the Apes series that is be coming out, The Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. And on reviewing this particular movie, there is some real issues that came up with this in terms of science versus religion, about role of human nature, and a bunch of other aspects that I think are really good themes that we can dive into as well. And this would be good conversation, not only within the church, but outside the church too, to unbelievers to say, here are some themes. What's the best way to deal with it? And then we're going to follow up with the week after, talk about the 2001 version of Planet of the Apes, and then go over some of the more recent ones. So looking forward to that, guys. And I don't know if you like the monkey movies or not. My wife absolutely
Adam,
hates
you have
these.
issues.
What did he say?
One
of my favorites.
I'm assuming it's still a movie. You got issues, boy.
No, it probably was the 68 version of Planet of the Apes.
Yep.
And contrary to popular opinion, I did not see that in the theater when it originally came out. Okay, so I'm not that old, but so again, thank you for your time, guys. It's been enjoyable, and we'll see you next time.